Hi Piccolo players! Today's video is on the last movement of Scheherazade, the main excerpt for us, the very fast double-tongued 30-second passage in the last movement. Okay, so I'm just going to run it down one time, and then I'll go over the fingerings I'm using and how I go about practicing this difficult excerpt. First of all, the fingerings I'm using a few alternate fingerings, or not even really alternate fingerings, but trill fingerings. So at the beginning, first measure is good, daka, 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 daka. And then for D to E, I'm just using the trill fingering. So rather going D to E natural. In the second measure, just D and lift the ring finger, D, E, D. Daka, 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 daka. And then for the last F of that measure, I'm just lifting my A key. So I'm doing this fake, it's like the E to F trill. So in the second measure, D, E, D, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, and then F. And then the next measure, F again like this, F, E, G, F, da, 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 and that's all fine. And then the same thing, yaka, daka, 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 and then D, E, D, C sharp, da, 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 F. So this is my F. F, E, F, E, G, da, 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 da. Same thing, F, E, F, E. You can just go like this a lot faster than, of course, the real fingering. It's a lot faster. Some things I have to think about for me, that second measure, going D, E, D, C sharp, for some reason, because it's all in the left hand, for some reason my wrist tends to move a tiny bit, or I feel a little tension in there or something. Anyway, going through that measure, I have to really make sure that my wrist right here is very still. So this measure, that nothing's happening here, it's just in the fingers. Like that. There's a couple of crescendo, decrescendo. I don't ever even think about those. I would definitely not do the crescendo part. You're trying to conserve your air, just got all the way through. And when you're with the whole orchestra, you're just sparkle on top. You can let everyone else do the crescendo. Like, no one's worrying about the crescendo, I guarantee you that. So the one thing though I do think about is that decrescendo, just to kind of conserve my air. So on this F, E, F, E, on the first crescendo here, just come down a little bit, just a little bit. My standard go-to way to practice this passage is to do one measure plus downbeat, two measures, and then in four measure phrases, and then the whole thing. So of course I can go slow, like first of all, let's just say 60 or so. Whatever speed you need to start out, but this is a good one for going. Etc. Just measure plus downbeat, always connecting to the downbeat. And then I might take just that process and move it all the way up into 78. 78's the final tempo. I've never had to play it any faster than 78. And then, so another way, then let me just go a little faster, like 72, and do 2-bar phrases. This is the next thing I would do. So the F, E, F, E, G is really hard. No, it's easy when you isolate it. But for me, I think my two fingers on the E don't come up fast enough, like split second. So hard. The other thing to try not to do is accent the high G. You kind of do need to press a little bit more air resistance for the high G to make sure it comes out, maybe. But if you do this accent, you know, to really make sure the high G comes out, you're wasting air. You don't have any time. You don't have any air reserves for that. And you risk the air, you risk the thing on the high G. like that. If you blow a little too much on that high G. So that phrase that has the F, E, F, E, G, da, 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 da. I'm trying to keep my air the same. So 1 measure plus downbeat, and then 2 measures plus downbeat, and then 4 measures at a time. So of course the hard part about this kind of a passage is that the double tonguing, the extreme fast double tonguing on moving notes like this, you don't have any double notes, is that it's very unforgiving. It really has to be perfect in the fingers, the finger combinations from one note to the next. Oftentimes another thing that happens is that the double tonguing won't go faster when you're playing it, but sometimes your fingers will move faster than your double tonguing. So sometimes I have to think back, like to pretend like I'm tonguing with my fingers, if that makes sense. So like my fingers are doing the double tonguing. Sometimes that helps me a little bit. If anything happens, my fingers go a little tiny bit faster than my double tonguing, my tongue action, and that'll glitch it out. You know, at some point years ago when I was practicing this, I thought, why, I was stumbling with it and thought, why in the world can't I do this? It's just like I can double tongue that fast. And if I had to slur this, I could slur the notes that fast. It's not that hard, but somehow putting those two things together. So I tried practicing just the double tonguing, changing the notes, the first note of each measure. So the first measure, just doing all B's, the second measure, doing all D's, the third measure doing all F's with my alternate F, etc. And that was helpful. And plus it just kind of changes up your practicing. So you can practice this up to speed to get your double tonguing going. I think that's about 78. I did the alternate F once, but I didn't like it, so then I did regular F. But anyways, you're just practicing the double tonguing and you're changing notes, you know, just every measure. And then you can do the same idea, changing every beat. B, B, D, D, F, G, C, D. Okay, so I'm just gonna run this one more time. And the things I'll be thinking about, just to sort of summarize, things I'll be thinking about is keeping my notes short and my fingers going the same speed as my tongue. Not moving my wrist in the second measure. No crescendo and no accent on the high G's. In the fourth measure, making sure my fingers, that's a good spot where my fingers might go faster than my tongue. To not do that. And just keeping it, not blowing too much air. Okay, so anyway, I'm just gonna play this one more time straight down, thinking of all those things I just went over. So happy practicing with this one. This is such a great piece. All the movements have great piccolo passages, and this particular passage is a lot of fun. I know once it's working for you, once it's kind of going, and you know immediately, as soon as you start, you know if it's going to be okay or not. But it's easier. I think this excerpt is easier with the orchestra, like most excerpts, because you have the whole sound of the orchestra absorbing some sound and giving you some padding. So if some of your notes aren't exactly perfect, the effect is still there. But at any rate, hopefully some of the things, the strategies, how I practice it, the trill fingerings used, things to think about your airspeed, etc., were helpful. And please hit subscribe, and then you'll be in the loop for future videos, such as this. I'm doing practice guides for a bunch of piccolo orchestral parts. Hope to see you at the next video, and thanks for watching.